Bob Sansevier here with Pioneer Press sports editor Mike Bass. Now, Mike, Kevin Love did something no player in NBA history has ever done. More than 35 points, at least 10 rebounds, at least 5 3-point shots, back-to-back games, never done before. Do you think he's actually shoving himself into MVP talk?
Absolutely. I don't know that he'll win it, but he's certainly putting himself in the conversation. The thing that I keep thinking about, Bob, is they signed him to this contract extension, and he wanted 5 years. They didn't want to give him 5 years. They gave him 4 with an opt-out on 3. I think that was a big mistake.
They should rip it up and say, here's your 5, because it is a mistake. They're trying to look at dump some of the deadwood off the team and give him the money that he should be getting, because you don't want to go through this in 3 years, and frankly, you will.
Right.
Because he's going to be a very hot commodity. He would have been hot anyway, but he's going to be even hotter now because this is not a mirage. He is a terrific player, and frankly, I think that, and we have talked about this earlier, Derek Williams is going to be a force this remainder of the season. He's starting to come on more now. He's still coming off the bench, but he can play, and he's having an impact at scoring and rebounding. And when you get Pekovic, he didn't play last night, but you get him back, and Rubio. There's a few things that I think people are starting to notice a couple of flaws in his game. However, he's still a terrific passer and is the point guard that they needed. This team could be difficult and they've done well against some of the teams with the better records in the Western Conference. So if they get into the playoffs, which right now they're a game over 500, I'd say they have a good shot of doing, they could scare some of these better, bigger teams.
I'd like to see him get a shooter. I think they still need
shooting guard, yep.
Shooting guard or small forward. Somebody who comes in, who, when the game's on the line, I was surprised to see Love developing into that guy. If they get somebody else who wants the ball at the end, who can take that shot, they thought Beasley could be that guy. He's not. He wants to.
Well, Love wants to be that guy,
right,
and can be.
If you have somebody else beside him who can drain that three-pointer or hit that shot if defenses are doubling or even tripling down on him to get him, this team could be really, really good. It'd be interesting to watch going into the trade deadline whether they can do that.
Well, he's the first Kevin ever to want the ball at the end of the game. That they've KL wants it, unlike KG.
So, Mr. Fourth Quarter in your mind.
Yes. Now, speaking of fourth quarters, going back a couple of years, NFC Championship game, Brett Favre was beat up quite a bit by the Saints in the fourth quarter, and Brad Childress actually was that summer. He talked about how he thought that they were hitting him a little late and that they were cheap shots. Now we find out that the Saints allegedly, there's some things that aren't alleged, but some of them they still have to get all the information, that Greg Williams, the coordinator there, was having a bounty program there and possibly at other teams too. Frankly, I think Greg Williams should be, if they find out that he was the instigator of it and behind it, he should be suspended for at least a year. He could be facing a lifetime ban. And frankly, the only way you're going to put an end to this is to seriously penalize him if he was behind it and the players involved. They have to. The only way they'll stop is if they know they're risking their livelihood.
I can't imagine they would suspend him for a season. I certainly expect them to suspend him 2 to 4 games, 4 games at least.
Then that doesn't put an end to it.
Probably 4 games would be the max, because if we think that this is the only time this has gone on, we're crazy. I think, but the NFL once it comes out like this at a time when the NFL is trying to crack down on illegal hits, they have to act.
Absolutely, and
but they can't act like, well, we didn't know.
I don't think a 4-game suspension makes the point. I think at least the season long. The other thing, and I don't know that's going to happen, but it could be looked at as criminal intent. If somebody wanted it, somebody from an NFL city said, you know what, this is what these players did and had to do was trying to inflict harm to these guys, you could look at it as a form of assault. I don't know that it will happen, but there may be criminal charges. That specter remains as a possibility. I just think the league, you got a commissioner that has got to make an example of some people. Maybe Sean Payton winds up with a couple of game suspension. Maybe Mickey Loomis does, the GM with the Saints. Players certainly that took part in this should face suspensions, but I think the one who is going to take the brunt of it and absolutely should would be the instigator. In that case, if it turns out everything we're hearing is true, it's Greg Williams. And I think right now the Rams, he's a defensive coordinator, they better start looking for a defensive coordinator for the year because they're going to need one.
What about Jonathan Vilma? If the reports are true that he offered $10,000 to, I think it was $10,000 to knock Favre out of the game, what do you do to him?
Well, if that turns out to be the case too, then you have to come down hard on him too. I mean, this is basically it is a bounty. And I know that it's happened in the league. Players have said 30 or 40% of the players are doing it. I would think you start suspending guys and cutting into their livelihood, it'll get closer to 0 than it does to 40.
Yeah, the league's going to have to come down hard. I think we both agree on that.
Well, speaking of leagues coming down hard, they didn't come down hard, but 20 years ago, the Tier 1 and Tier 2 hockey, or system in hockey, came about. It lasted 2 seasons, which, frankly, probably was 2 seasons too long. This was a thing that many people object to of, let's give everyone a trophy. Because the Tier 2 was teams that weren't good enough to make the main tournament. And these teams were allowed to play and have their own little tournaments, so they all get their little ribbons. And it was foolish and a mistake. And it eventually got to, after 2 years, to what it is now, a small school division and a big school division. And the fact that they allow a small school team like a Grand Rapids or Roseau to play up is a good thing. And I think that after 2 years, they got to where it should have been. But that was a rough 2 years.
Yeah, looking back, it's 20 years, and you still hear from people who say, oh, we should go back to the old way. It's the same people in Indiana who will say, we can't have another Milan. It's got to be Hoosiers. Go back to the one. Those aren't going to happen. And sometimes you need to take a step back to take 2 forward. In Minnesota, they took a big step back to move to the point where they are now, because people still look back at that. The fact that Rosemount made it all the way to the championship game of Tier 2, even though they had only 1 win in the regular season. That's just amazing.
Well, it's amazing that they allowed it to start the way it did and not go right to the class. And frankly, the only sport that I think that you could make an argument that you could have one eventual winner would be wrestling.
Could be.
But they're not going to. They're going to stay with the 3 class they have. But that one would make sense. I don't have a problem at all with a Class A and a Class AA in hockey, because it is giving some of the smaller schools an opportunity to win. And again, those small schools that think they can play up like a Grand Rapids have that opportunity if they want to. So I think it's fine the way it is now. It's not, unlike 20 years ago, it's not broke.
Well, and think of it this way. People, fans, people who've been watching it for years, they know this. But the kids now, how many of them were even alive when it was a one-school tournament? I mean, it was one tournament. None of them, I would guess.
Unless they flunked a few
20
years.
Exactly. So this is all they know. It's the people on the outside who've been watching it who are upset about this. I think it's like a lot of things in sports and in life. You just got to let go and deal with it and do.
Well, I tell you what.
So it is what it
if
is.
you're still clinging to the Tier 2 and you're still upset about it.
No, the first, going back to the original
but I mean, if
setup
there's still
where
people harping about it, it might be time to maybe start watching TV or something. Find another, or plant a flower pot, or get a flower pot.
Telegraph.
Yeah. Anyway, Mike, I don't know if I should say I hope that another 20 years from now we can talk about it again, or I hope another 20 years ago none of us are here to be able to talk about it again. In any case, we'll find out in the days, weeks, months, years, eons, millennia, what's after that? Whatever ahead.